David Hume's perspective about self. Some philosophers believe that a person's memory is their identity, that we define ourselves based on our past experiences, even though the self may be the spirit or even the body that houses it. But David Hume argues that the self is an illusion. David Hume, born on April 26, 1711 at Edinburgh, Scotland, was a philosopher, economist, and historian of the Age of Enlightenment. In his book titled A Treatise of Human Nature, he puts forth the argument that the self is nothing but a bundle of perceptions, which succeed each other with an inconceivable rapidity. David Hume continued in his empiricist tradition of John Locke, believing that the source of all genuine knowledge is our direct sense experience. As we have seen, this empiricist approach had led Locke to a number of surprising conclusions regarding the self, including the belief that the self's existence is dependent on our consciousness of it. In Locke's view, your self is not tied to any particular body or substance, and it only exists in other times and places because of our memory of those experiences. Using the same empiricist principle as Locke, Hume ends up with an even more startling conclusion. If we carefully examine our sense experience through the process of introspection, we discovered that there is no self. How is this possible? From Hume's perspective, this astonishing belief is only possible conclusion, consistent with an honest and objective examination of our experience.
According to Hume, if we carefully examine the contents of our experience, we find that there are only two distinct entities, impressions and ideas. How did Hume arrive at the idea that there is no such things as the idea of the self? As John Locke argues, ideas come from sensation and reflection. Hume calls it an impression. Hence, it must be noted that when Hume used the term impression, he meant idea. When we say impression in Hume, this includes both sensation and reflection in Locke. And for Hume, we can have an idea that is an impression of something if we experience it concretely. For this reason, Hume argues that ideas that do not represent something in reality are abstract ideas and, therefore, meaningless. The idea of unicorn is an example of an abstract idea because, in the first place, there is no unicorn in reality. For Hume, there is multiplicity of ideas, yet all these ideas are linked together that form a coherent whole. According to Hume, this is made possible by the laws of association.
According to Hume, there are three laws of association, namely resemblance, contiguity in time or place, and cause and effect. Hume says that in the law of resemblance, the idea of one object tends to call to mind ideas of resembling objects. For instance, the idea of honey resembles the ideas of sweet and liquid. In the law of contiguity in time and place, Hume says that when we think, for instance, of Osama bin Laden, we tend to think of terrorism or suicide bombing. In the law of cause and effect, Hume says that when we think of, for instance, the idea of a fresh egg falling to the ground, it calls to mind the idea of a splattered mess. Please note that Hume puts more emphasis on the third law of cause and effect. As a matter of fact, the law of cause and effect is one of the most important concepts in Hume's theory of ideas.
According to Hume, we are assured of some facts by the present testimony of our senses or by the records of our memory. In other words, for Hume, we know that facts exist in reality simply because we experience them. This explains why Hume was an empiricist, understanding. So again, by what means do we get beyond such facts? According to Hume, it is by means of the relation of cause and effect that we are enabled to make, more or less, reasonable predictions and conjectures that go beyond the date of perception and memory.
Hume makes a compelling case for the non-existence of the self. At any given time, you are only experiencing your thoughts. For instance, you can now hear this voice speaking from your screen and feel the chair beneath you. You might be hungry or thirsty, but can you really see a permanent self inside you at this point? Sure, you may have memories of things that you've done, but to quote the film Memento, memory can change the shape of the room. It can change the color of a car, and memories can be distorted. They are just an interpretation. Some questions to consider are, what are we when we're asleep? We have no sense and perceive nothing. Our body may continue to exist, but does our self? Also, if our memories were erased, would we be the same person? And finally, could we learn who we used to be from friends and family? If so, is our self internal or observed by others?